trying to get back to some semblance of order on this channel as we say goodbye to the worst two-thirds of Trek. Some episodes today deal with space pirates, among other fun topics on Best of Trek, Worst of Trek. I'm your host, Dustin Wing. Casting a wide net at 258, alone. Or the Tholian Web. I really hope this is the last time I have to say this, but this episode doesn't belong this high up on the list. It's one of those classic TOS episodes, and even sets up a few great episodes of future Trek. But upon second watch for rankings, where we had this around number 200, it's more of a lower 300s even. For TOS Season 3, this is quite good, even if that particular feat isn't that hard. As the Enterprise responds to the OG Defiant, the ship starts phasing out of our reality, and accidentally takes Kirk with it. After an extremely drawn-out series of talks between Bones and Spock about the proper course of actions going forward, they do manage to get the captain back, and using this transition layer between the Prime and Mirror universes, to escape the Tholians' trap for invading their space. This episode contains the most people seen on screen at one time in TOS. The premise is decent, but the runtime is stretched thin, though sets up a bunch of canon for the future. Losing captains at 256 and 257, Space Pirates, or Gambit Parts 1 and 2. The main cast case a CD bar for clues to what happened to Captain Picard while he did his archaeologist thing. Apparently, he was vaporized, and the gang that did it was headed to another archaeological site in the sector. Riker gets permission from Starfleet brass to go on a vigilante mission, and gets himself taken prisoner by the pirates, leaving Data in command of the Enterprise, which is actually the most time in the big chair Brent Spiner gets in 7 years. Will finds his captain playing pirate, helping this group identify very specific Vulcan artifacts. This story probably didn't need to be 2 parts, but after several layers of cat and mouse encounters, Riker is returned and the captain turns the pirate captain's control device on him, and uncovers what the whole thing is all about. A psionic device created in the final days of the Vulcans' Great War, but could easily be defeated through logic and peace. This one is a wonderful addition to Vulcan canon. Running aground at 255, more space pirates, or Anomaly. After weeks spent in the Expanse, Enterprise runs into the first of many special anomalies. It leaves them vulnerable to theft by pirates, which also leads them to the first of many spheres in the Expanse that's changing the habitability of the region for takeover. They get most of their stuff back and leave the pirates in a bad way, after also copying a Xindi database this crew acquired. Along the way, Archer shows right here in episode 2 that he's not messing around, by letting one of the pirates almost die by decompressing an airlock in an effort to extract information. While his first, it's probably not even his most ethically questionable decision while going through the Season 3 Xindi arc. When Enterprise is boarded initially, the 80s tom fills aren't the worst music cues in Trek, but could have been better. Otherwise, this is a great episode to really get the ball rolling on this action-packed season of Trek. Peering into the darkness at 254, Echoes of the Void, or Night. This is nearly the antithesis of how any normal season of television would start, in literal nothingness. Not only is this a rare non-cliffhanger, it takes place in the least densely packed part of the galaxy that will take 2 years to get across. After only 2 months, the ship and even crew are basically on autopilot, learning to deal with the existential nature of nothingness. Janeway is hit the worst and wallows in self-pity in her quarters about the ethics of stranding the crew in the Delta Q for all these years. The episode is an incredible psychological thriller, even if one of the most purposely slow-paced episodes in Trek canon. We're introduced to the Malon, who use the mostly dead space as a dumping ground for their antimatter waste, and even after Voyager shows them how to eliminate antimatter waste altogether, This waste export captain doesn't want his profession relegated to that of town crier. When it becomes a choice of saving a race that lives in this region, or using a vortex the Malon know about to get to the other side of this space, Chakotay really has to try hard to get Kathy to stop her suicidal self-loathing, trying to stay behind and stop the Malon in the Delta Flyer. It's a very different formula for Trek, but seems to have paid off brilliantly overall. Doing galactic-level calculations at 253, what ifs, or statistical probabilities. The biggest what if the episode deals with is what Julian's fate would have been if the procedure that augmented him as a child didn't go exactly right. As a group that underwent similar treatments to Jules come under his care, they're exposed to some of the wider world and start pulling together patterns from simple pieces of media that could be vital to the war effort. These defective augments on the fringe of society finally have a purpose for Starfleet, which seems a little convenient on the part of that always tolerant organization, though in the end reject their overall plan about the war being nearly unwinnable and back to the Institute where they came from. I find this episode more interesting than many, and while we could have done with less of the party scene, it extends that Star Trek umbrella of inclusivity to those with special needs. Jeffrey Combs reportedly had difficulty doing native speech Wayun, memorizing a series of meaningless gibberish. Finally planting some roots at 252, Disembarking, or Homestead. For easily Star Trek's most goofy regular, he gets possibly the best send-off in the history of the show. Being only a few episodes removed from Voyager's completion, although is the perfect way for the crew to wind down before getting home. As by some miracle tens of thousands of light years from Talax, a group of rogue Talaxians are found trying to keep their asteroid home from being mined, giving Neelix his first real taste of passion since Kes died. He helps them get a defense perimeter going and Janeway to bend that pesky Prime Directive a little and intervene, as most of the recurring extras and the rest of the cast line up to wish him well with his new adopted family. I cry almost every time. While the plot is pretty straightforward, there's something so perfect about Tuvok lightening up a little with his comedic partner for 7 seasons, and doing a little shuffle. And the series could have ended here and been okay. Some would argue this is better than the final episode, but I don't think we'll see it in these rankings for a while. Closing out the block and the bottom 2/3 of this list at numbers 251 and 250, Battle of the Bastards, or Such Sweet Sorrow Parts 1 and 2. This is a very frustrating episode to rank. While it has arguably the most involved on-screen space battle in all of Trek, based on sheer numbers in the final fight that ensues in Part 2, the series of events should go, open volley, battle over, roll credits. It didn't even need to turn into the Game of Thrones Battle of the Bastards with the Klingons and other players from the season showing up to turn the tide near the end. Though they do buy Burnham time to figure out what to do with her new Red Angel suit, which by this point in the season is kind of a headache and a downfall. Don't get me wrong, I love that Disco goes to the 32nd century and is building their own canon, but considering they went to the future to keep Control from getting the data, even though Georgiou destroys Control right before they leave in the Spore Cube, is deeply frustrating. All of those major plot holes aside, I love the effects and the cinematography on this one overall. I love that they bring back Spumoni ice cream loving Poe from the short trek Runaways, which, when I watched this episode for notes, I stopped and added another 15 minutes to this two-parter to get to see the ultimate food fight that introduces the Queen of Zyhia, closing the episode by silencing the officers with remaining knowledge and setting up the spin-off for Strange New Worlds was brilliant.
Ah, computer. That program is available.
Thanks, Major. Thanks, Major.
Last time on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Thanks, Major.
Next interface, 2 hours, 12 minutes.
Yes, Doctor.
Thanks, Major.
Dr. McCoy!
Thanks, Major.
It was definitely due to the deteriorating effects of
Thanks, Major.
Results of the last Theragun test ready for you, Doctor.
Major.
5.
Thanks, Major.
Are you standing by with a hypo?
Thanks, Major.
Intruder alert.
Feeling humiliation because no one showed up. I give my performance, feeling enthralled. I'll go